Hello and welcome to episode number 93 of the WP Cafe Show with me, Keith Devon, and my co-host, Mark Wilkinson. It's the podcast and show where we talk about all things WordPress, WordPress development, WordPress business, how we are getting on running our tiny WordPress team, our little agency, what's going on in the overall ecosystem, just anything we can come up with to have a little natter about for a few minutes every week. We've been away for a couple of weeks, so if you're back with us, thanks for joining us again. Sorry for the wait. I was away in France last Friday, so that's why I wasn't around. As always, if you do like content like this, you can subscribe here on YouTube if you're watching along live, or if you're listening on a podcast, make sure you subscribe using your favorite podcast player. And you can also find us on X. Where else can you find us, Mark? wpcafe.show if you want to actually go to the website. That's enough of the intro. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. Very good, thank you. Hope everyone else is okay. I've had a good week doing various bits and bobs, quite a few sales calls, which is always nice, trying to sell a few more products, a few integrations to do as well for our job relay products, and actually also WordPress. We had some a couple of sales of that recently, didn't we, with some new clients, which was good.
Yeah.
And getting stuck into this new build that we've finally got started with, building a website for a school, something we've done before. So this is kind of similar, but obviously everything's a little bit different. And the big difference being is that we're, I think, going to fully embrace full site editing. So we've got a lot to learn and things to do, which kind of covers some of the points for today. But yeah, it's been a good week. Not so bad. What about you?
Yeah, not too bad. A little bit slow, I guess, but I'm trying to use some of this time just to kind of get up to speed so that we're ready to hit the ground running with this new project. So I'm reading as many kind of newsletters and blog posts, etc., about full site editing. And yeah, do we even call it that anymore? Is it still called full site editing, or is it called just the site editor and the block editor? I don't know. These are the questions that I have. But yeah, just trying to kind of generally get my head into that. We're going to take a question that we got from a member of our audience later that kind of covers some of it, and one of the resources that we've both seen, which is a really good resource. So that's one of the things I've noticed, is that content is getting better around this stuff. I feel like it's maybe maturing enough that people, like developers, are starting to use it and starting to figure some of this stuff out. Like people like us, like not that we figured it out yet, but hopefully we will, and then we'll start sharing. So I know some of our other friends are doing that, like Mark Halsmead and Nick Wilmot, trying to like share their journey with working with this kind of thing.
I was about to say the opposite, actually, but having thought about it again, you're right. The content is definitely getting better, but there doesn't seem to be like a go-to place for how to learn to build agency website, as in websites that agencies build for clients. It seems to be, or it feels like it's either learn how to let people build Wix style websites where you can just change everything and we give you all these style color palettes and all sorts and you can pick from them to do it yourself, or it's at the other end of the scale where it's like learn how to do things for like enterprises and big websites and things. There doesn't seem to be that niche place where there's loads of us around. That's the thing, isn't it? So I don't know how we fix that. There seems to be a lot of disjointed information.
I think it's
all
coming.
Around,
I think it's coming. I mean, it's a lot of the official stuff. I think we've touched on this before. It seems to be focused around theme builders. Like if you were building a theme to put on the repo or whatever, and I don't find that stuff particularly helpful. And that's a lot of the stuff coming out of like Automatic and WP Engine, and the kind of make blog and stuff like that. I find.
And I think that goes to people who are like making their own website and pick a theme because
exactly
this theme has these color palettes and it has all these things.
Yeah,
actually that's not what. Well, I was going to say not what most of us want. That's probably not true. It's not what the agency market wants. I don't think they want to know how to make it so that customers can't break sites and give them control, but not too much control, etc. So yeah, that's kind of where we are with the content area, but it is getting better. You're right, definitely.
And I think there's a few people that are trying to fill that gap. I know we talk about Frank Klein a lot and his content. I know that tends to feel at the kind of enterprisey scale because that's Frank's world and his environment, but he does have a lot of good content just generally about how to work with WordPress up front, like building client sites. I mean, it's not all like super top level stuff. Some of it's just like how to use the site editor and block editor to set things up in a fairly basic way. Follow Brian Cords. I think his stuff's really brilliant. Like he's been experimenting with pattern styles, for instance, which is something we could talk about. And he gives the real, I guess it's what we try to do on this show as well. He gives the kind of real life experience of these things rather than the glossy brochure.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would be semi-critical of some people in the community, maybe not the people, but publications, including, you know, people from Automatic, WP Engine, the official kind of blog, like the core contributors and things like that. Slightly critical of them for just being like almost too positive, like too cheerleady about the whole project. It's like, look at this brilliant thing. This means you can do this, and this. Pattern styles being one. And then Brian starts trying to actually use pattern styles like he would if he was building a client's website. And actually it's like, yeah, but I can't do this. Yeah, but I can't do that. And yeah, but there's this limitation and that limitation. You know, the stuff that you don't read about in the brochure. And I think that's the content for me that is just so much more valuable. Not because it's negative, because it's real. So like, I might have jumped into using pattern styles in this next project thinking this is going to solve all our problems, only to find out all those things that Brian has just found out. So people like him kind of like trailblazing is super useful for us, people like us. Yeah. So,
I still think there's a bit of a misunderstanding with what some of these features actually are as well. I don't really understand what pattern styles are. I thought they were called section styles at one point.
So yeah, they are section styles, aren't they?
What do they do? I don't quite understand it, but anyway, that's and I think some of the headline features have been a bit miscommunicated sometimes in that they're not quite understanding what they are. But maybe that's just me. I'm getting old, so maybe that's just me. But you know, stuff like I've said it before, the interactivity API. We've been given examples of what it is, but it doesn't really. It's not been broken down into the fundamentals of what it is. I don't think.
Well, it might have been somewhere, but yeah.
You know, we've been given examples. You know, you can do this with buttons, or I don't know, but you know, or yeah, and that seems strange that the key features haven't been outlined clearer. Pattern styles being a good example, I think. And people seem to be saying they are good for agencies, but I can't understand why they're good for agencies. Again, that might just be me because I'm getting old, but I don't know. Anyway, a couple of questions come in. Elliot says, "What specific how-tos are you wanting to know?" That's a very good question. I think
that is a good question.
As we get into this build, so just to give you a bit of background about this build, the build is currently going through wireframes, which we're not doing, by the way. They are nearly finished, actually. And then there will be a design element on top of that. And then Keith will also be doing a little bit of a design element to sort of expand those designs out to the block editor and make sure that everything's covered. We will then be in a position to write, how do we do this? How do we deliver this design? How do we deliver this design for this block? And I'm sure the specific how-tos we're wanting to know will be much more clearer once that specific stage has been reached, because we're in a position where we want to be able to deliver the best experience for clients in terms of editing content, as well as making sure that they have got limited options for breaking stuff, but the flexibility to build the stuff that they want. So that's where the challenge is going to lie. And I'm sure over the coming weeks in this episode, sorry, in this show, we'll be able to discuss what we've come across and hopefully how we've solved it for you. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Which is good.
Yeah. Just want to say hello to people that are in the chat. Hello to Kieran, Craig, Jackson, and Elliot. Thanks for being here today, and anyone else that's joining us today. We were really late in promoting this show, so I think we're not going to have too many on the live for the live chat. But thanks.
Sorry, just to come back to Elliot's question, I think one example we covered wasn't last week because we went on there last week, a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about button styles and how is it best to deliver button styles for clients who have, primary buttons, secondary buttons, other types of buttons. How do we deliver it so that they can use those buttons? Potentially they can edit those buttons in the editor, but they can't go off-piste and go rogue and make their own buttons. That's one example of how do we deliver that. And I'm sure there'll be lots of other examples of that sort of thing that we want to get across.
I think one of the common ones for us we've talked about before is when to reach for a custom post type and when to just keep everything within the block editor or site editor. So things like that, like should FAQs, should case studies, should these be post types or not? And that's something we come up against all the time.
Which then leads to more questions in that, like, if we'd have a post type where we can put FAQs in and each FAQ is a post, we can then reuse them over the website, but WordPress doesn't actually have a block to say, put this post in this page. So we then need to build a block. Is it worth doing that? Or do we ditch that idea? Do we do it some other way? Use a reusable block or something like that? They're not called reusable blocks anymore. I don't know what they're called. You get the idea. Sync patterns, is that right?
I've got a lot of questions around CSS. Like where does custom CSS sit now? I think it's in block style sheets. I think. But it can also live in theme JSON. So for example, the section styles thing that we were talking about. That's one of the things that Brian came up against. So it's like, where do I put my CSS that can't be achieved with theme JSON?
Yep.
You can add section style CSS to theme JSON just as CSS, rather than as JSON, if that makes sense.
Not really, no.
You just add actual CSS as the value
of what though?
Of like, I don't know. There must be a CSS key or something, or custom.
That's what I'm saying, because you apply CSS rules to an element.
Yeah,
they don't exist in theme JSON. So what am I putting my CSS against? So I don't understand.
Elements do exist in theme JSON.
So I have like p dot featured paragraph, and I can then
so that custom class. Yeah, so this is it. These are my questions. I don't really know how to handle all this stuff. And then there's block CSS as well. So like each individual block can have its own style sheet now. I don't know if you can also write that in theme.json. I'm not sure. And then these section styles, should that go in your block CSS, or should it go in your theme JSON? Should it go in somewhere else? Like, do we need style.css in the theme for any CSS these days? I just don't know how to structure things. Like, can I still use compilers? Should I still use compilers? I don't think I really need to anymore because CSS has evolved so much.
You can't write Sass though, then, can you?
Well,
you don't have a compiler.
Yeah, exactly. Do I need to? Is the point?
I don't know.
Anymore. So that's a separate question in a way. But
one of Frank's tweets.
It's going to be very different. Like the way we build this next project is going to be very different to the way we built the last one from a CSS point of view.
Definitely. One of Frank's tweets said style.css gets loaded on every page in the head. So it is render blocking.
Yeah.
So unless you need it on every page in the head, you probably shouldn't use it.
Yes.
But then if it's loaded on every page in the head anyway, as in, even if you don't put stuff in it, do I have to stop it loading on every page?
Well, that's a good question. If it's empty, like,
what's the point of loading
it empty? Why is it loaded? Can we just stop it from being loaded? I mean,
I presume you still need it to be a theme, do you? Like a theme used to need a style.css.
But why do we? I think that's exactly why. But why do we still need that in this day and age when we're using this new way of doing things and nobody actually puts CSS in their style.css file anymore? Like, why are we using that for? I guess it's the kind of site kind of the theme kind of meta, isn't it? Like, why is that not in theme JSON these days? Like, it seems like the perfectly logical place for that information to go. Like, well, I'm not saying. I guess the argument is that most themes aren't block themes, so they don't use theme JSON. But like, if it is a block theme, can we just ditch the style.css file and just be done with it? But
I would have thought writing CSS in the theme JSON would be horrific, though. So surely it would just make more sense to enqueue a block style sheet, and then you can write CSS.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really not looking forward to this new CSS world. Let me tell you.
Theme JSON.
We'll see how it goes. Do you know what? Like, I have seen some people, I think Brian being one of them, saying some quite positive things about it once you get into it. Like, once you really understand the structure of theme JSON and you start working with it, the power that it gives you, and the fact that like you just don't need to worry about like editor styles and front end styles anymore. Like, it's just all it's just right for the system and the platform. Like, it's not CSS as you know it, but it works really well. Like,
we'll get into it, won't we?
We will get into it.
It says custom blocks use their own CSS, and yes, you can still use SAS SCSS to build those custom blocks or build processes. So presumably that's yes, you can still use SAS if you want to use SAS.
I don't know if I want to use SAS anymore. That's another thing I might try on this project. It's just not using it.
Get it.
Yeah.
Always Open Design, thank you for joining us. You can add CSS and block styles into theme JSON to a degree. Block style sheets may be a better choice. That's one of the things I need to understand better. Yeah, it's like, for me, it just seems sensible to, if you want to add custom CSS to a block, just enqueue a block style sheet and add the CSS to that. And then presumably that style sheet only gets rendered when the block's used on a page. And then you can just write CSS. I would have thought that's a sensible solution, but hey ho.
I think so.
And then Elliot says, also it makes things more performant to create your own blocks. Therefore, CSS styles are only loaded when the block is used. That's through Tygo down. That I read that like you should be making custom blocks for stuff, but I don't think that's what he means.
To create your own blocks.
Anyway.
No. Might need a bit of clarification on that, Elliot, but thank you for the comment. I think I sort of know what you mean, but yeah. So it's interesting new world. I'm just so itching to get started, and I think that brings us on to our next kind of topic, as it were. Why have we not started this project yet? So it's been an interesting one for us because initially the client came to us with a very tight deadline. And we were told that there would be some branding work done in the first instance by another agency. And then we would essentially take over and we'd have 6 weeks to design and build the website.
Brave.
So we took that on, thinking, right, how are we going to do this? And we've spoken about that in previous episodes, about the kind of platform first. I can't remember. I think that's what we called it, platform first approach or something, or I can't remember. But basically,
building something with WordPress's constraints in mind rather than perhaps the other way around.
Yes. So we take what WordPress gives us and then we add some flair rather than just coming up with something out of thin air and then figuring out working out how to do it in WordPress. Yeah. So that was the idea. And we felt that because we had control over the design process, we could probably deliver on time and on budget. We were pretty confident it was going to be tight. It was going to, compromises were going to have to be made, but we're confident. What has happened in the interim is that the agency that they were working with to do the designs, I think that relationship kind of fell through, or they weren't happy or something. But another design agency has come in. They've done their branding, I think, by coming up with some are they like print adverts, Mark, or something? The things that they were kind of originally working on. Yeah, to try to get the kind of the look and feel of the brand right. And then, like, kind of out of the blue, we were delivered this, like, I don't know what kind of chart you would call it, but it's like a timeline of the design agency's work. And I was like, hang on a second, they're doing wireframes and they're actually designing the site. So it was like, right, this is a bit weird. But we've had some really good calls with the client and actually and the design
And the design
team.
agency, it's been good.
And in one way, I'm really disappointed because I was looking forward to doing some design work. I was really looking forward to getting back into that side of things because I haven't done it in a while. And I was worried because once the design is taken away from our control, the kind of scope of the whole project is kind of taken away from our control. So we've still got this budget, but we've got someone else making the design decisions. In fairness to the agency, the design agency, they were brilliant. They were basically like, we'll run everything by you first to make sure that anything that we suggest is within scope.
Which is really nice to hear. Like, you don't hear that very often. Like, basically, we'll do something, we'll then ask you first before we actually send the thing that we've done to the client.
Yeah.
Which is a really good way of doing it in a sense, because like we've got to be sure we can build that for the budget that we've got.
Yeah. So in some ways, I'm a bit relieved as well because design processes they're difficult, and I know that there's some like challenging stakeholders on this project. So in some ways, I was also quite relieved that this is going to be taken away from us, all that stress, and that we just come in and do our jobs, like just building it out. But it's hard. This process that we're going through at the minute is difficult because they keep asking us, is this in scope? Is this in scope? So they've provided wireframes so far for, I think, 6 templates or something like that. 6-page templates.
6 pages, yeah.
And I mean, they're wireframes, so visually they're very, very basic, as they should be. And there's some conversation around, can we have this type of element or that type, this type of block or that type of block or whatever? Is this in scope from a development point of view? I'm like, well, I don't know because I haven't seen the designs. We don't have the finished the finished project. So in the design phase, they might come up with something absolutely like crazy that is we can't do with the blocks we've got. We've got to build custom blocks, and I've got to do loads of CSS work to make sure it's okay responsively and all this kind of stuff. And
whereas beforehand, we would be responsible for delivering the design of said element that we would know would work with whatever we've decided in WordPress. So that would be the difference, yeah.
So I can say today that to them, I mean, those wireframes don't look like they will push things out of scope. But until I know exactly what I'm doing, I don't have the scope and I don't have the, I can't make those decisions. So that's been a challenge. I think so far it's been fine.
I think the call we had with the design team was really good and really put my mind more at rest that actually this is going to go okay. It's not going to be, hey, look at these funky designs we've made, aren't they awesome? And then we're like, yeah, but it's going to take us 6 months to build them and it's going to cost you like 3 times as much money. I think they now understand the position that everybody's in, and to make this work, for everybody to be happy, we've got to work within the constraints of the timescales and budget of what's already been agreed. And they're willing to do that, I think. By sending us ideas and things first, which I think is going to be helpful.
It is, yeah. It's interesting as well, and I think like anyone that kind of works for an agency or runs an agency will sympathize with this. It's like, so we got the wireframes through, and they're on Adobe XD, and it was sent out to like the whole team, and suddenly there's like loads and loads of comments. I'm like, okay, let's flick through the comments, see what the client thinks. I'm like, they're all from this one guy who we've never heard of. I have no idea who he is. It's like, who is this person that is suddenly like absolutely critical to this project? Like, and why don't we know his name? Why don't we know? To be fair, I think that part of that's on us, because at some stage we should maybe have asked the question, who will be involved in the decision making. I assumed it was the person who hired us, probably the headmaster, because he was mentioned a few times, and the kind of marketing consultant that they have on board. But there's this other person involved, and I still don't know who he is, and he seems to have all the opinions. So that's been quite interesting to see. That was another reason I was like, I'm quite glad I'm not doing this design anymore.
And actually, it was an interesting experience reading the comments, because a lot of the times I was reading the comments thinking, oh, come on, these are just wireframes. Like, what, that's just a silly comment. But actually, fair play to the guy. He's actually looked at every aspect of these wireframes, and he's really thought about every aspect and commented on them. So, which is probably what he's asked to do. So, like, he's done a really thorough job of that, actually.
Because we would be critical if it was the other way. And they didn't say anything at this stage, and then further down the line, they were like, why is this like this? Why is that like this? So, you can't have it both ways, Yeah.
My initial reaction was,
yeah, me too.
But actually, when you think about it, it's actually really good that someone's taken the time to look at every aspect and put their comments forward, which is kind of what they're asked to do. So I think we've got to take that as a positive, in that they're really engaged with it. And hopefully that'll be good going forward. So, can't wait to get stuck into it. Hopefully this time next week, we should have a better position to sort of move forward with some aspects of it. And then certainly the week after will be all systems go.
Saying that, we have had a couple of conversations where you said, I'm not going to have anything to do in this project.
I don't think I am. No, really.
Yeah,
not much.
That's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what I've got to do. But yeah, I don't think there's anything that you. I mean, you can do anything, but like, I don't think there's anything that you couldn't do.
I mean, it's
you might be enqueuing some style sheets and. Yeah, but like, you can do that. You don't even need to do that.
Exactly. So how much PHP are we going to write on this project? I'd say not very much.
I imagine. Yeah. So I'll just be having a beer.
Enjoy. It's quite good though, because we obviously do have the kind of multiple facets to our business, and during some periods I'm kind of scratching around for stuff to do, and you're really busy with like job relay or whatever. This could be the other way around for a little while. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's heading in the right direction. I hope is that project. We had a few more comments in about what we were chatting about before. Let's just quickly run through those. Sam says, what if you want to add a button to a custom block? You can add the HTML from the core WP button, but the styles won't load.
Very good point.
So when
do the styles not load? Do we know that for
WordPress doesn't know it's a button. Doesn't know it's a button block.
So why not?
Couldn't you just use inner blocks for that though, in your custom block, and say here's an area that is allowable to inner blocks and only allows a button block? So the person would add a button block, and then it would know there's a button block in load.
I mean, that
would be my thought on that one.
Hacky, that's a good idea.
If you just write your own HTML markup and it's into a custom block, it is not going to know that that's actually from a core block, and therefore load the styles. I think that's correct. Elliot just says, to clarify, create your own blocks using register block type to create your own buttons and remove support for padding. But then you're not using any core blocks. I don't see the point of that. So I would imagine that's not the way to go. I would imagine the way to go is use core blocks, but take away the things you don't want the client to change, as in padding, margins, custom colors, etc. I think.
Yeah.
And I think you can do most of that in theme.json, from what I've understood.
I think so. Well, it brings us very nicely on to our next point, which was we had a question. Mark, you put out a tweet asking for questions.
I did put out a tweet asking for questions, and I thought this was an extremely good one. I'm not quite sure whether we've got the answer yet, though, but we'll give it a go because it's a really good question. So this was from, let me just get his name. Bear with me a second. Redirecting me to John White. So thank you, John, for your question. And he asked, as an agency, we like to pass sites to clients where they are able to update their content without affecting the design and the layout. The block editor and the full site editing give too much control. How are agencies handing sites over to clients and locking down what they can change? So I think this is a really common concern or worry about clients. I tend to attend the build mode sessions on Friday afternoons run by the WP Engine developer team. And a lot of the discussion there was similar to this. Some people haven't embraced block editing yet because they can't do this. They can't deliver sites to clients whereby they just don't really have much control over the design because they want that locked down and they want that secure. So, well, how can we do that then?
I've got an answer, but it's not my answer. I'm going to leave this in the capable hands of Nick Diego. So if you head on over to developer.wordpress.org/news, the first article, as in the most recent article, is 15 ways to curate the WordPress editing experience. And it is answering exactly this question. Basically, how do we lock down the editor? And I'll just read through the table of contents because I think that is indicative of what can be done. So curation examples, he says, configure theme.json settings. That doesn't really tell us very much. Then it's disable specific blocks. So we can do that. Unregister block variations. So if you don't want the row variation of the grid block, get rid of it. Or the stack variation or the grid variation or whatever. Unregister block styles. So if we don't want the outline version of the button style, we can get rid of that. Disable block supports. Go ahead. Sorry.
The thing that caught my eye about unregistered block styles was that you have to use JavaScript.
Oh, for that one, okay.
Because it says there is a function, I think, for PHP, but it won't work, apparently the PHP one, if you've used JavaScript to register it or something like that, because it's not aware of it or something.
Right, okay.
So it says it's safer to do it with JavaScript.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll interrupt you.
That's okay. We've then got disable block supports and enable block supports. We've got disable the user interface for locking blocks, disable the core editor, disable inspector tabs, disable openverse, set default image sizes, disable the block directory, disable the pattern directory. I would suggest that those are fairly important for a curated editor experience. Disable access to the template editor, and unregister formatting options on rich text blocks. That's pretty extensive in terms of what you might want to do to lock down that experience. So I would say actually WordPress is in a really, really healthy place from a kind of editor curation point of view. It's just we just need to learn how to do these things. And I think the difficult bit here is making the decisions about what should and shouldn't be allowed or visible. Actually implementing the decision seems fairly straightforward. And there's lots and lots of the interface that we can lock down, which is great. So definitely check out that article, and we will definitely be implementing some of this stuff in our new project. So hopefully
extensively, I think.
I think so. This is the kind of thing I was like, there will be very obvious solutions to this, but as I was like found this article and I thought this is the kind of article that I kind of want to, I guess, bookmark and like somehow curate a collection of stuff like this that is like, this is a kind of ultimate guide to this area of the WordPress website development, experience. Like, and I feel like this is the kind of thing I just want a go-to place where stuff like this is just really well organized. Like at the minute, this is a blog post. It'll go down that list chronologically and kind of disappear unless you know what you're looking for, or unless it comes up high in a search result. It's going to be hard to find again.
We do need a creating the editor section in the handbook or whatever it is in WordPress.
It probably is.
Sits there
is, to be fair. But if it is the handbook the place to go these days? Like, is that what we're after? I haven't actually been to it in a while. So
if that is the place to put these things, why isn't this article the home article on that section then? Why is it here? It seems a bit strange.
Yeah.
Like you said, because it'll just sit here. It's a great article, but it'll just move further down the list. And,
maybe it is. Maybe it pretty much is there. And he's just updated the page on the thing and then decided to throw a blog post out about it as well, just for a bit of extra visibility. I don't know the answer. So again, maybe that's an answer that we will have in the future. Is like, go here. These are the 3 top resources, whether it's fullsiteediting.com, the theme developer handbook, and the whatever else.
Something that I found on that article, which when I was doing some research just to prepare for this project, I was thinking about when we were talking about button styles, and like there's the sort of the rounded and outline. Is it rounded and outline, or is it just round? There's some default button styles, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
I assumed that those were 2024, but it appears they're not. The default core. Why would core provide styles for buttons? Surely that's a theme's job, isn't it? Because the theme styles them. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, you can unregister them, so we will be doing that. I'm no doubt unregistering our own button styles. But that's good. But that article is definitely going to be one that is extensively used, and then we can hopefully provide some feedback as to what works, what doesn't work, what's good, what's not good, etc. But cool.
I don't know if I want to tackle this or not, but this just made me think. So Elliot, thanks for the comment. Elliot says, locking down is kind of counterintuitive to the WordPress way of democratizing publishing and the freedoms that come with open source. Oh, I don't know what to say. I totally get where you're coming from, Elliot, but I also completely disagree. Not completely disagree. That's not true. I agree and disagree, basically, with that sentiment.
I'll counter that by saying that our clients are paying us to deliver them a solution that fulfills their needs. And their needs in 90% of the clients we have is not to be able to apply any color to any background, etc., because they know that'll break things. So by doing that and by leaving everything open the WordPress way, we are not delivering what they're asking for.
I would also say that the freedoms that come with open source, let us do this. And that is a positive thing about this being an open source platform.
Yeah.
The fact that we can make changes to the needs of our specific and our client specific use case. The fact that this isn't just an off the shelf product that does what it does and like it or lump it, we can change it for the benefit of the people that want to use it. I would say, it's not really counterintuitive at all. It is the essence of it. It's the essence of WordPress that we can do this kind of thing and lock it down and change it.
Because it's WordPress and it's open source and we've delivered, I don't know, whatever. We've took the padding off buttons because it's in the spec and so on. That doesn't mean to say in the future that can't change. It's open source. It's changeable. We can discuss and we can change things. So I think you're not locking down possibilities by saying, well, for now you can't. I'm using that as an example, but you can't change the padding on a button. You might be able to in the future if we decide that's a good idea for reasons that we don't know at this present time. And you're not closing those off by making that decision now.
Yeah. Interesting. So it follows up with perhaps WordPress isn't the right solution then. Just build a flat HTML, CSS. Well, no, because then the client doesn't have a content editor.
Yeah.
So I don't see how that's the solution at all. They want to.
We don't want the clients to be the designer.
Edit their content. That's what we want. Yes, we want them to be able to edit the content that they want to be able to edit.
Yes.
And give them the design freedom that they need and that they want.
Which won't be complete design freedom.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. That's a great topic.
Yeah, it is, definitely. Any other questions? Sam say here, how much time do you allow in a proposal for locking the client out of their own website? How do you word that? We don't put that in our website, in our proposal. I don't quite understand what you mean. Locking the client out.
I guess he means like for doing stuff like this, for like locking stuff down. We don't. It's not in the proposal. We don't do line items in the proposal anyway. So
no.
It's not like it's build a such and such block, £200, style this thing, £250. It's just we give them a figure and say, this is what you're going to get. And we don't go through line by line about what we're going to allow and what we're going to hide, because that would be impossible. That would go on forever. So we just have those conversations as we go and use our best judgment, basically.
So I suppose an example of that would be, I'll take the buttons again. They come back. We've locked out the fact that you can't change the padding and the colors, but you can choose a button style. They come back and say, well, why can't I change the color of this button to green? And then we have the conversation as to why. Because the brief said this, and we've delivered this. And if that's changed, we can have the discussion.
Exactly. If you now need to be able to add the colors, or you didn't realize that this was the trade-off, we can change it.
Might be a change of scope, but we can change it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Very good. I think we're done.
I think that's a good place to stop.
It is good conversation there.
Just coming back to the question that we got, and I asked on the WP Cafe X, if you do have any topics or questions or things that you want us to discuss, and then you guys can jump into the comments. It'd be nice to know what they are, to see if there's any specific things that you think be good things to bring up and discuss. That'd be good. Yeah, let us know.
Absolutely. Hopefully, we'll have lots of juicy content coming up with this build. I'm really looking forward to us actually having to work through these problems and come up with solutions and then sharing them, because it feels like for a long time on this show, we've been talking kind of like hypothetically about stuff like these new APIs or new things that have landed in WordPress that we haven't actually used. We've just been giving our opinions on what we think about them from just reading the blog posts. I can't wait to be actually getting into the weeds of this and doing it for real. I think hopefully we'll have lots of interesting stuff to say coming up. But thanks for joining us today. Thanks for everyone that joined us live on YouTube. It is always an absolute pleasure to have people commenting with their thoughts and their questions. So thank you, everyone, today. Thanks for joining us elsewhere, either later on catching the show on YouTube or on the podcast. Do leave a little like if you can. If you're watching on YouTube, it doesn't take much to do it. Subscribe if you do like this kind of content and you want to hear more from us and hear how this project develops. I think it's going to be an interesting one. So please do subscribe either on YouTube or your podcast. And you can always follow us over on X as well, at WP Cafe Show. I always get it wrong. I think that is right. It should be around next Friday. I think we're around next Friday.
We said that last Friday, but yeah, we should be around next Friday.
Should be around next Friday. But if you subscribe, you don't even need to worry about it. You'll just get things delivered to you. So that's the good reason to do it. But
we'll see you next week.
We'll catch you soon. See you next time. Bye.